At 3:47 in the morning, a man walked through the front door of the gas station where I worked. Except the door never opened, and the bell above it never rang. I was alone behind the counter, restocking cigarettes, when I caught him in the corner of my eye near the coffee station. Gray work jacket, standing too still, like he was waiting for something else to notice him first. The deadbolt on that door had been thrown since 11 o'clock. Store policy after midnight. I checked it myself, twice. He picked up an empty coffee pot, poured nothing into a paper cup, and set $2 exact on the counter without once looking at me. Then he walked toward the hallway in the back, the one marked no entry, the one nobody had mentioned during my 4 nights of training. Nobody had mentioned a lot of things, including why the girl who worked this shift before me stopped signing her timesheets 3 weeks before I got hired. My name doesn't matter much here. What matters is that I needed the job. I was 22, a semester short of a degree I couldn't currently afford, and Coldwater Fuel and Grocery was hiring for the graveyard shift. 11 to 7, $16 an hour. Cash bump if you didn't call out. The station sits on Route 9, 41 miles from the nearest town in either direction. No cell signal past the tree line. One road in, one road out, and a sign out front that's been missing its C for so long it just reads Old Water. The manager, a heavy-set man named Pruitt, hired me over the phone and met me exactly once. My first night, to hand me the keys and a laminated binder of procedures nobody actually follows. He mentioned, almost as an afterthought, that the last night clerk had moved on suddenly, and that I shouldn't worry about the index card taped under the register. I worried about the index card immediately. It wasn't in the binder. It was handwritten, taped to the underside of the counter where only the night person would find it, in blue ink that had started to bleed from age or something wet. Rule 1. Always lock the back door by 11, even if it's already locked. Rule 2. If the pumps show a car fueling and there's no car there, don't go outside to check. Wait for it to stop on its own. Rule 3. The monitor for aisle 3 lies sometimes. Trust your eyes, not the screen. Rule 4. If the phone rings after 3 a.m., let it ring 4 times before you pick up, never 3. Rule 5. Don't ever let anyone use the employee restroom. Not even you. There was a 6th line, but it had been scratched out so hard the pen had torn through the paper. I could only make out one surviving word. Don't. I remember laughing about it that first night. I remember not laughing by the second. The first few nights were quiet in the way empty places are quiet. The hum of the freezers, the buzz of the Old Water sign, a couple of truckers passing through around 1 and never coming back inside. I told myself the rules were just some bored ex-employee's idea of a joke, a haunted house bit to freak out the new guy. Then, on night 3, pump 4 started running. I watched it through the window, the numbers ticking up, gallons and dollars climbing steadily like someone was actually fueling a car. Except the lot was empty. No headlights, no engine sound, nothing but that pump's little digital counter spinning like clockwork under the sodium lights. I remembered Rule 2. I didn't go outside. I stood at the window and watched $40 worth of gas get pumped into nothing, and then the display reset to 0 like it had never happened. Night 4. The register's security monitor, the one covering aisle 3, snacks and canned goods, showed a second person standing behind the counter with me. I felt nothing beside me. I saw no one when I turned my head, but on the little black and white screen, there was a shape standing exactly where I stood, and it wasn't moving when I was. I remembered Rule 3. Trust your eyes, not the screen. My eyes said I was alone. I chose to believe them, because the alternative wasn't something I had a plan for. That was the same night the phone on the wall rang. The store landline nobody ever used. At 3:14 in the morning, I picked it up before I could stop myself. Silence on the other end. Just breathing, slow and even, like someone standing very close to the receiver on the other side. I remembered Rule 4 half a second too late. I'd already answered on the first ring. The voice that came through wasn't the breathing. It was underneath it, layered quiet, and it said my name. Not a nickname. Not hey. My actual full name. First and last. The one printed on my paycheck and nowhere else in this building. I hung up. I didn't sleep the rest of that shift. And I don't mean I stayed awake out of fear. I mean my body wouldn't let me sit down. I stood behind that counter until 7 a.m. staring at a clock that, I noticed for the first time, had stopped moving at 3:47 and had been sitting there, frozen, since some point I couldn't place. My phone, when I finally got signal on the drive home, told me it was 7:04 in the morning. The store clock never agreed with that. It never would again. Night 5. I found the restroom door standing open. Rule 5. I hadn't opened it. I hadn't given anyone the code. Inside, scratched into the paint above the mirror in shaky, deliberate letters, was a name, not mine, a woman's name. Beneath it, a tally of small hash marks, dozens of them, grouped in rows of 5, like someone had been counting nights. I found her name tag 2 nights later, wedged behind the ice cream freezer where it had clearly been dropped and never retrieved. Hannah. The plastic was warm to the touch, though the freezer beside it ran at 19 degrees. I started keeping the tag in my pocket. I told myself it was for evidence. Really, I think I just didn't want it alone back there in the dark. On what should have been my 9th night, I clocked in at 11 like always. The time clock printed my slip, 11 p.m. Normal, except when I checked the drawer for the previous stubs. A habit I'd picked up, cross-referencing shifts, every single one of Hannah's old timesheets, going back months, showed her clocking in at 11 and clocking out at exactly 3:47 a.m. Every night, the same minute, never once past it. I understood, standing there with that stack of paper in my hand. That 3:47 wasn't a time, it was a wall. The man in the gray jacket came back that night, same as the hook of this story. Walked through a locked door, poured nothing into a cup, left 2 exact dollars, and headed for the hallway marked a no entry. This time, I followed him. I know Rule 1 said to keep that door locked. I know every instinct I had told me to stay behind the counter and let the shift end like it always somehow did. But I was done not knowing, and I think some part of me needed to see Hannah's name mean something before I let this place swallow it too. The hallway was longer than the building should have allowed, longer than the walls outside it, longer than physics had any right to permit. Doors lined both sides, unmarked, and every single one had a name tag nailed above the frame. I counted 11 before I stopped counting. Hannah's would have made 12. At the end of the hallway stood a clock, a big analog wall clock, the kind you'd see in a school gymnasium, and its hands were fixed at 3:47. Not broken, not stopped, just held, the second hand twitching in place like it was straining against something. The man in the gray jacket was standing beneath it. When he finally turned to face me, I understood he wasn't a customer at all. He was a name tag that had run out of nights. His face had the particular emptiness of someone who'd said the same 4 sentences and poured the same empty cup of coffee so many times that nothing of him was left to say anything else. He pointed, once, at the clock, then at me. I understood. Or the warning. Or maybe it wasn't a choice at all. Maybe it was just a description of what I already was. Stay past 3:47 enough nights in a row, and you stop clocking out. You become part of what keeps the next person's coffee pot full of nothing. I had one thing the others apparently hadn't had, the $2 from the counter. Still sitting where he'd left it, still warm in my hand from when I'd picked it up on my way down the hall. I don't know why I grabbed it. I don't know why it mattered. But I set it down at his feet, the exact way he'd set it on my counter. And for the first time all week, I said something out loud in that hallway. Your shift's over. Go home. The clock's second hand lurched forward. 3:48. I don't remember walking back up the hallway. I remember standing behind the register with the sun coming up orange through the front windows, and the store clock reading 7:02 for the first time in 9 nights. Ticking normally, like nothing had ever been wrong with it. Pruitt showed up an hour later to open for the day's shift. He didn't ask how the night went. He never does. I gave my 2 weeks notice that morning. I told him it wasn't a good fit. He nodded like he'd heard that sentence 100 times before, in 100 different voices, and didn't seem surprised in the slightest. On my last night, training the guy who'd replace me, I taped an index card under the register in blue ink, and I wrote him 5 rules. I almost wrote a 6th. I got as far as 3 words before I scratched it out so hard the pen tore through the paper. Because some things you don't finish writing. You just let the next person find out on their own. The way I did. The way Hannah must have. He asked me, on his first night, why the store clock was 10 minutes behind. I told him it wasn't behind. It just liked 3:47 better than most other times. He laughed. I didn't. I never went looking for that hallway again. And I never found Hannah's name tag in my pocket after that last night. I checked, more than once, in a kind of quiet panic that I still can't fully explain. It was simply gone. The way a debt is gone once somebody else agrees to carry it. Some mornings, driving home past the tree line where the signal finally comes back, my phone buzzes with a voicemail I never asked for. No caller ID, no number, just 11 seconds of breathing, slow and even, and somewhere underneath it, so quiet I have to hold the phone right up against my ear to be sure. It says a name, not mine anymore. If you've ever worked a shift where the clock didn't feel like it was keeping honest time, you already know exactly what I'm talking about, and I'd genuinely like to hear it. Put it in the comments. I read every one, usually right around 3 a.m., when I can't sleep anyway. And if this is your first time here, go ahead and subscribe. There's always room for one more name on the list. Just don't be surprised if, somewhere down the line, you clock in, and the shift before you never quite clocked out. The camera doesn't lie. That's what I kept telling myself at 2:47 in the morning, alone behind the counter of a gas station 40 miles from the nearest stoplight, staring at grainy black and white footage of myself already standing in aisle 3. Same red vest, same tired slouch, not moving, just facing the camera, like it was waiting for me to notice. I hadn't even parked my car yet. I told myself it was a glitch in the system, a cached frame, anything but what it looked like. I wish that was true. My name's Danny, 22, 1 semester short of an associate's degree, and flat broke enough that when a listing popped up for overnight clerk at a place called Route 9 Fuel and Go, I didn't ask a lot of questions. $11 an hour, 40 miles outside town. out past where the cell service gets thin and the cornfields start swallowing the road whole. The woman who trained me, Loretta, ran the place like she'd rather be anywhere else. She showed me the register, the safe combination, where the mop was kept for when the bathroom flooded, which apparently it did often. Then, right before she left me alone for my first shift, she stopped at the door and gave me 2 rules like they were an afterthought. Don't restock the walk-in cooler after 3, she said. Whatever's low stays low till morning. I laughed, asked why. She didn't laugh back. And if the bell over the door rings twice and nobody walks in, don't look up. Just let it stop on its own. I figured she was messing with the new guy. Every job's got some story they tell to freak out the rookie. I clocked in at 11, made a pot of coffee nobody was going to drink, and settled in for what I thought was going to be the most boring 8 hours of my life. It was not. Around midnight, the bell over the door rang. Twice, sharp. Then a beat later, sharp again, like someone had pushed the door open and let it swing shut, then caught it and pushed it a second time. Nobody came in. I remembered what Loretta said. I kept my eyes on the register, heart doing something uncomfortable in my chest, and waited. 10 seconds. 20. The bell didn't ring a third time. When I finally looked up, the door was closed, same as it had been all night. No wind outside, no car in the lot. I chalked it up to nerves and old hardware. Bells stick, doors settle. That's what I told myself while I restocked the cigarette case. Hands a little too steady, like I was performing calm for someone watching. At 1:15, a man came in. No bell that time. I noticed that, filed it away without understanding why it mattered. He was maybe 60, wearing a flannel jacket zipped to the throat even though it was July. And he walked straight to the coffee station without once looking at me. He didn't pour a cup. He just stood there, hand resting on the carafe handle, staring at the wall like he was waiting for instructions. Help you find something? I asked. He didn't answer. Didn't blink, as far as I could tell. After maybe 90 seconds, he turned and walked back out. No bell then, either. I checked the security monitor out of habit. On the feed, the coffee station was empty. He'd never been there at all. By 2 a.m., I'd convinced myself I was just overtired, running on gas station coffee and a bad feeling that didn't mean anything. Then the radio behind the counter, the one that only ever picked up static that far out, clicked on by itself and played 4 bars of a song I didn't recognize before dissolving back into static. Right before it cut out, underneath the noise, I heard my name. Just once. Not shouted. Just said, flat, like someone reading it off a list. That's when I checked the camera and saw myself standing in aisle 3. I told you about that already. What I didn't tell you is what happened after I looked away from the monitor and back at the actual aisle 3, 6 feet in front of me. It was empty. Obviously, I was standing at the counter the whole time, but there were wet footprints on the tile leading from the empty aisle straight to the walk-in cooler door. Boot-shaped. Mine were sneakers. The cooler door was propped open 2 inches, held by nothing I could see. Cold air breathing out into the store. I did not go check what was in it. I remembered rule number 1, and for the first time all night, I was grateful somebody had bothered to tell me the rules at all. Around 2:50, I found a name tag wedged behind the cigarette case. Rick, it said, the letters half scratched off like someone had tried to grind the name away with a coin. Loretta had mentioned a Rick during training. The guy before me, who left in a hurry and never picked up his last check. I put the tag in my pocket. I don't know why. It just felt like something that shouldn't be left lying around for the next person. At 3:40, a woman pulled up to pump 4, came inside to pay cash, and smiled at me like we were old friends. "Good to see you're still here," she said. "Wasn't sure you'd make it back after last time." I'd never seen her before in my life. I told her that. She just tilted her head, like I was the one saying something strange, and slid a crumpled receipt across the counter with her change. The date on it was from 14 months ago. My name was already printed on it, at the bottom, under a signature line. I hadn't worked there 14 months ago. I hadn't worked there 14 days ago. I stopped pretending I could explain any of it away around 4 a.m. When I finally worked up the nerve to check the security footage from the start of my shift, I watched myself walk in at 11, clock in, start the coffee. Normal. Then, at 11:47, while the real me, sitting right there watching the tape, had definitely been behind the register the whole time. The me on the screen walked to aisle 3, turned to face the camera, and stopped. And stayed stopped. Not a blink. Not a shift of weight. Just watching the lens like it was checking in with something on the other side of it. I scrubbed the footage back further, past my shift, into Loretta's, into shifts I'd never worked. Different faces, same red vest, same aisle, same stance. A woman. An older man. Someone who might have been Rick. All of them, at some point, walking to that exact spot and freezing. And then just not being there in the next clip. Gone from the footage. Presumably gone from the job, too. The way Loretta said Rick left in a hurry. I understood it then, or as much as I could stand to. This station didn't lose employees. It kept them. The ones who stayed past the finish of a shift. Who clocked out. Who ran every step of the closing routine right down to the letter. Who let the store believe they'd completed the loop. They didn't leave. They became the next thing standing in aisle 3 at 11:47, waiting for the new hire to notice. The regulars who came back and remembered me from months I hadn't lived yet. The man at the coffee station. Rick's name, scratched at, like he'd tried to fight his way out of being erased. The bell rang twice again at 4:58. This time I understood what it meant. Something was on its way in, and the doubled ring was the door remembering two versions of the same person crossing the threshold at once. I had 11 minutes left on my shift. Closing procedure was simple. Count the drawer, lock the pumps, set the alarm, lock the door on the way out. Simple, and I was suddenly certain, with the kind of certainty that doesn't come from thinking. That finishing it the normal way was exactly how you got kept. So I didn't finish it. I left the drawer open, the coffee pot on, the lights burning. And I walked straight past the register toward the door at 5:03, 7 minutes before my shift technically ended. Behind me, I heard footsteps that weren't mine start across the tile. Unhurried, patient, the way you walk when you already know where the other person is headed. I didn't look back to check whose they were. I got in my car, and I didn't check the mirror before I pulled onto the highway. Because some part of me understood that if something was sitting in the back seat, I did not want to know until I was already moving too fast to stop. Nothing was there. I checked eventually, put enough miles between me and Route 9 that the gas station lights were long gone behind the corn. I never went back for my last paycheck. I heard, secondhand, that the listing went back up 2 weeks later. Overnight clerk, $11 an hour. No experience necessary. I work days now. Different town, different store, nothing that keeps me anywhere past sundown. Most nights I don't think about it at all. But every so often, maybe once a month, always somewhere between 11:40 and midnight, I catch my reflection in a dark window, and for just a half second before it catches up to me, it's already turned to face me first. I don't wait around to find out what it's checking for. If you've ever pulled a graveyard shift somewhere too quiet, too far out, somewhere with a rule nobody would explain. I want to hear about it. Put it in the comments. I read every one, or at least every one that only shows up once. Subscribe if you want more of these before your next night shift starts. And if a bell rings twice behind you tonight and nobody's there, don't look up. The monitor above the register flickered, and there he was, a man standing in aisle 3, not moving, staring straight into the camera like he already knew I was watching him. I was alone. I'd locked the front door myself 20 minutes earlier. I looked up from the register. Aisle 3 was empty. I looked back at the screen. He was closer now, and underneath his frozen, staring face, the timestamp read 3:33 a.m. It had read 3:33 a.m. for the last 11 minutes. I want to say I laughed it off. I didn't. I reached for the store phone to call somebody. Anybody. And that's when I noticed it wasn't just the monitor. The clock on the wall behind me had stopped at exactly the same time. My name doesn't matter for this story. What matters is that 3 weeks ago, I needed money fast. And the only job hiring within 30 miles was the night shift at a gas station called Kohl's Fuel and Grocery. Sitting alone on Route 9 between two stretches of pine trees so thick you can't see a single porch light in any direction. The manager who hired me, an older guy named Walt, barely looked me in the eye during the interview. He said the pay was good because nobody wants nights out here. He said turnover was high. He never explained why, and I never asked, because rent doesn't care about your gut feelings. On my first shift, Walt handed me a laminated index card taped inside the register drawer. Handwritten, not printed. For rules. Rule 1. Keep the front door unlocked until exactly 3 a.m. Rule 2. Never sell anything to a customer who pays an exact change. Rule 3. If the bell above the door rings and no one walks in, do not go looking. Rule 4. No matter what you hear, do not leave the counter between 3 o'clock and 4 a.m. I laughed. Walt didn't. He just said, follow them and you'll be fine. And left before I could ask a single question. For 2 weeks, nothing happened. I started to think the rules were some leftover joke from a bored ex-employee. Then came my 15th shift. Then came aisle 3. I hung up the store phone. The line was dead, just a soft static hum, almost like breathing. I checked my cell. No bars, which wasn't unusual out here, but they didn't even try to load. They just sat there, empty, refusing to search. I made myself walk toward aisle 3. Rule 3 said don't go looking if the bell rings and no one comes in. But the bell hadn't rung. This felt different. The aisle was empty. Cans of soup, exactly where they should be. No footprints in the dust on the tile, which hadn't been mopped since my shift started. I checked the monitor again. Now it showed me, standing in that same aisle, confused, staring up at the camera. But I was behind the counter the whole time. There were 2 of me on that screen. One live, one that shouldn't exist. Behind the register hung a faded Employee of the Month board, curling photos going back decades. I'd never really looked at it before. Now I did. A photo from 1979, black and white. A young man smiling stiffly under the name J. Holloway. I glanced at the monitor one more time before going back to the counter. For half a second, the frozen face in aisle 3 lined up perfectly with the photo on the wall. Same jaw, same too wide smile. Then the feed jumped back to static and it was gone. At 2:47, the bell above the door rang. I looked up. No one was there. The doormat outside, wet from earlier rain, had a fresh set of footprints leading in. and none leading back out. At 2:58, headlights swept the lot. A truck pulled up to pump 6. An old man walked in without a word and set 3 items on the counter: a bottle of water, a pack of gum, a lighter. When I told him the total, he reached into his coat and counted out the exact change. Not a cent more, not a cent less. Rule 2 lit up in my head. I told him the card reader was down, that I couldn't ring him up. He didn't argue. He just smiled. Too wide. The same too wide smile from the photo. And walked back out into the dark, leaving everything on the counter. The store phone rang once. Just once. I picked it up out of pure reflex and heard nothing but wind. And then, buried underneath it, a voice that might have been a man's, might have been nothing at all, saying 3 words before the line went dead again. Don't let him in. I checked the clock. 3:02 a.m. The wall clock and the register clock, which had matched all night, were now 11 minutes apart. Under the counter, wedged behind a box of receipt paper, I found a logbook Walt had never mentioned. Pages of different handwriting, all describing the same 4 rules. Near the back, one entry stopped me cold. If the door won't lock at 3, don't force it. Whatever's outside wants in more than you want it out. J. The entry after that, different handwriting, said only, J. Didn't come back from break. Nothing was written for 6 months after. Then someone new had started the logbook over from page 1, like nobody had ever told them what came before. At exactly 3:33, the bell rang again. This time I didn't look away from the monitor. On the screen, the front door swung open on its own. No one walked through it, but the little bell above it swung once, twice, and stopped, like a hand had caught it mid-motion. The lights flickered, and for 1 full second, every clock in the building, the wall clock, the register, my phone, the microwave in the back, all showed 3:33. Then I heard footsteps, not from the door, from behind me, down the employee hallway that led only to a locked supply closet. I turned. The closet door, locked all shift, stood open a few inches. Behind it wasn't shelves or mops. It was a hallway that went back farther than the building should physically allow, lit by a single bulb, and at the far end of it stood a figure in the exact pose as the man in aisle 3. Facing me. Waiting. I understood then, the way you understand a nightmare halfway through it. Walt's rules were never about protecting customers from me, or me from strangers. They existed to keep this 1 hour, this exact shift, contained. Somebody, years ago, broke Rule 4. Stepped away from the counter between 3 and 4. And whatever came through that door never fully left. It just kept the loop running, kept finding someone new to fill the counter every time an employee finally broke. The old man's headlights were still glowing out in the lot. The logbook, the missing employee, the second version of me on the screen. None of it was separate. It was all the same hour, repeating, patient, waiting for someone scared enough to step away from that register. I had one choice left, and maybe 10 seconds to make it. Stand at the counter and wait out the hour like the rules demanded. Or run for the front door, past the frozen version of myself on the monitor, past whatever was standing in that hallway, and get out onto Route 9 before 4 a.m. arrived. I ran. I don't remember unlocking the door. I remember cold air, gravel under my shoes, and the gas station shrinking behind me as I sprinted down the shoulder of Route 9 with no headlights in either direction. I didn't stop until the sun came up over the tree line, for miles down the road, sitting on a guardrail, shaking, alive. I never went back for my final paycheck. I never spoke to Walt again. For a while, I told myself I'd gotten out clean. Then last week, my cousin texted me a photo. She'd stopped for gas on Route 9 late at night. Car trouble, no other station for miles. She said the clerk on duty barely spoke. Just stood behind the counter and watched her the entire time she pumped her gas. In the photo, taken through the front window without her realizing what she'd caught, you can see the counter, the register, the rows of cigarettes behind the glass. And you can see me standing exactly where I used to stand at 3:33 on the dot. If you've ever worked a night shift somewhere that didn't feel right, somewhere the silence felt like it was listening back, I want to hear about it. Tell me in the comments, because after that night, I don't work past sundown anymore, and some part of me still needs to know I'm not the only one. Subscribe if you made it this far. There are more nights like this one waiting to be told. And if you're ever driving Route 9 after 3 a.m. and you see a gas station with the lights still on, keep driving. Don't stop for gas. And whatever you do, don't look at the clock.